Welcome to All Saints Catholic School e-learning. The big idea that we're exploring today is conditional statements, specifically the if-else statement. For this session, you will need to have watched the big idea video on this topic first. Find a quiet place where you can focus and have a pen and paper handy. By the end of this video, you should be able to recall what conditional statements are, considered how we use these conditional statements in Python, and analysed how conditional statements are assessed in the exam and where else we can use them. Before we begin, let's recall our big idea. So what do we mean by conditional statements in computer science, and which words do we associate with conditional statements? Here are a few. This video links to your topic because if-else statements are conditional statements. They also use selection. They're an extension of the original if statements which we've already looked at, and they allow two options to be selected. If-else statements also follow Boolean logic. There can only be two conditions. The if-else statement basically forces a decision between two options. They can only be either A or B, true or false, yes or no. Take a look at the code on the right hand side, which is a good example of an if-else statement. Note the indentation. Here is a worked example of the if-else statement. Notice the original variable password, which is our input for the user to enter their password. Then we have the if-else statement. Take a look at the indentation in the if-else statement. This is where marks would be gained in the exam. Also note the if-else statement itself. A mark would also be given for successful implementation of the if-else statement. Typically, in an exam situation where an answer like this has been requested, marks would be given for the input, for the if-else statement overall, for indentation, and also for the entire code itself being correct. This means that even if you were to attempt the if-else statement in the exam and you weren't successful with the entire code, marks still can be gained for specific areas which are correct. Once you've examined the code, write it into Python and save it as password.py, and then run the code and check that it works. It's now your turn to practice what you have been learning about if-else statements. Here is a challenge to create a voting program. There are 3 tasks as part of that program. Once you've completed all 3 tasks, save the program as vote.py and run it and check it works. For those of you who are successful, have a go at the extension below in purple. Here is one example of successful code. Age and name variables are defined, and the user has been asked to enter their age and name. Then we have the if-else statement. If the user is not over 18, then they're told they can't vote. On the right hand side is a successful running of the code, and as we can see, Joe, who is 12, is not allowed to vote yet. There could be many errors in your code, and there are 3 examples below. First of all, you may lack indentation in your code. In this case, expected an indentation block means that you should have put indentation before print. In the second example, there is invalid syntax. In this case, if has a capital I when it should have a lowercase I. And lastly, another invalid syntax message is where the colon has been missed out. There is always more than one way to write the code, so your code may not look exactly like the example above. Well done. You should now be able to recall what conditional statements are, thought about how we use them in Python, and analysed how they are assessed in the exam and where else we may use them in computer science.